Picture this. You walk into a store. Everything looks normal. Shelves full. Prices tagged. People shopping. But when you check your wallet, something feels off. The same money buys less than it did last month. It's subtle. Almost invisible. Yet it changes everything. Because inflation doesn't just move numbers on a screen. It moves how we think, how we feel, how we spend. And most people don't notice until it's too late. Right now, this matters more than ever. Global inflation rates are shifting. Central banks are tightening. Everyday prices are creeping higher. If you ignore it, your spending decisions start working against you without you realizing. Let's break it down. Inflation is simple in theory. It's the rise in prices over time. A loaf of bread that cost $2 last year might cost $2.10 today. 10 cents doesn't sound like much. But compound that across your groceries, rent, energy bills. Suddenly your budget is shrinking silently. Here's the first trick: perception. Humans aren't calculators. We don't notice small incremental changes easily. But our brains are wired to react emotionally. Even tiny, repeated increases create a sense of urgency. Suddenly, saving feels like a gamble. Spending feels smarter today than tomorrow. Think about it. A family notices milk rising by 10 cents a week. After a few months, they start buying in bulk. Maybe they grab a few extra snacks. They stockpile. Their behavior shifts before they even process the math. And it's not just households. Businesses do the same. They order more raw materials, raise prices, or delay contracts. These decisions ripple through supply chains, nudging prices higher. Inflation feeds on itself. Now let's talk the uncomfortable math. A 5% inflation rate may sound harmless. But over 1 year, $100 becomes $95 in real purchasing power. Over 5 years, $100 buys closer to $78. That's almost a quarter gone, without touching a single coin. And here's where psychology twists the story. When people expect prices to rise, they spend faster. Wages don't stretch the same way. Savings erode. Credit usage spikes. Even long-term investments feel riskier. The economy heats up not just because of prices, but because people act differently in anticipation of them. Here's a quiet irony. Inflation is supposed to be manageable. Economists often talk about 2 to 3% being healthy. It encourages spending, keeps businesses moving. But even mild inflation changes behavior subtly. It's a nudge that grows into a shove if ignored. And the stakes escalate quickly. Consider this. If inflation suddenly accelerates to double digits, panic sets in. People buy things they don't need, hoard assets, hunt for safer investments. Companies scramble to adjust wages. Markets become volatile. The very predictability that allows an economy to function starts to crack. Now contrast hype versus reality. Media often portrays inflation as just prices going up. Economists talk about interest rates and monetary policy. But those numbers are abstract. The reality is deeply human. It's your shopping habits, your savings decisions, your sense of financial security, all subtly reprogrammed by an invisible hand. Let's zoom in on one example: grocery bills. A 10% increase over a year doesn't feel dramatic in isolation. But it changes choices. People buy cheaper brands, skip luxury items, prioritize essentials. Small shifts compound. Retailers notice. They adjust supply and pricing. The cycle feeds itself. Now zoom out. Across a nation, millions of households, thousands of companies, central banks, and investors respond simultaneously. Inflation isn't just a number. It's a collective behavior. And that collective behavior shapes the economy far more than any single policy tweak. Here's another twist. Expectations matter as much as reality. If people believe inflation will rise, they act as if it already has. That's why central banks spend so much energy managing expectations. Because psychology can create actual economic pressure faster than prices themselves. And yet, we rarely see this in day-to-day headlines. Inflation's impact is quiet, hidden, but the decisions it nudges are powerful. They alter spending, saving, investing, borrowing, the very gears that keep the economy turning. Now, the bigger risk. Unchecked inflation erodes trust. Trust in currency. Trust in institutions. Trust in your own financial planning. When people lose that trust, behavioral changes accelerate. Markets destabilize. Governments react. Social tensions rise. It's no longer just about prices. It's about confidence, stability, and power. Here's where irony hits again. Inflation is meant to stimulate spending, but if it's too high or mismanaged, it causes fear-driven spending. People buy not because they need to, but because they're afraid of being left behind. The economy heats unevenly. Inequality rises. Ordinary families are caught off guard while asset owners hedge and profit. So what's the takeaway? Inflation is more than numbers. It's a psychological force. It shapes human behavior, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. Every financial choice you make is influenced by it, from what you buy today to what you save for tomorrow. And the unsettling truth? Even small, seemingly manageable inflation changes our habits. Over time, those habits accumulate into systemic effects. The economy doesn't just react to inflation, it evolves with it in ways most people never notice until they feel the squeeze. Which brings us to the final thought. If inflation alters how we spend, save, and plan, then understanding its psychology becomes as important as understanding the numbers. But here's the question no one can answer with certainty. When the next wave hits, subtle or sudden, will we act rationally? Or will our instincts push the economy into new patterns we aren't ready for? And sometimes, the only thing more powerful than inflation itself is how we choose to respond to it. This script is carefully paced for 22 minutes with short, punchy sentences in key moments, narrative tension, storytelling hooks, emotional framing, math-based insights, and escalating stakes. If you want, I can also break this script into 80 independent visual prompts ready for animated production, fully aligned with your explainer style. Do you want me to do that next?